Box, a European deep tech accelerator, and a partner in Photon Hub Europe project. So funded by the EC, the European Commission, Photon Hub seeks to boost the competitiveness and uptake of photonic technologies across Europe. If you're a company innovating in photonics and would be interested either in grant funding and technical support, business and investment readiness coaching support, or training and access to advanced research centers focused on the technologies, which you will be seeing in the slide now. Feel free to get in touch with us directly. There's a website where you've got the address just below here in orange, photonhub.eu. Regarding the investment readiness more specifically, we're obviously running the webinar series which you've tuned in today. In that context, we're also launching our first open call to select 30 photonics companies which are looking to raise funding in the second half of this year, so 2022. And so this is what the community looks like, but this is what the link which will be in the chat box for the open call looks like when you click on it. The idea is that it's a one-kind investment readiness training to help startups as well as scale-ups to pitch to investors, present financials, understand the due diligence process, demonstrate success, legal documentation, practice pitching, and close a deal. It will culminate in an event called Info Venture Summit. You've got the logo there on the screen, which is happening between the 13th and the 14th of October in Bordeaux in France. And we'll have obviously some nice perks for everyone signing up and selected, including, well, the chance to attend the summit, personalized feedback from investors, fast track to be screened at the Info Summit open call, which is running in parallel, and more importantly, personalized mentoring sessions. So Delia will be sharing the link with you right now in the chat. As I said, please join the Photon Hub community because that's where you will be able to get all kinds of information, including for that open call, but for much more. So I guess we're all here for what's on the screen right now. So what's on the menu today? As the name suggests, Photonpreneurs is designed to share fundraising tips, best practices, exploring, designing, and launching companies in link with the science and technology of light, photonics. So without further ado, I've got two amazing speakers today who you should be able to see on the right-hand side of your screen. First, I'll introduce Almudena Trigo, who's the founding partner and chairwoman of BeAble Capital, a leader in science equity aimed at investing in industrial science at pre-seed and seed stages. So Almudena has got an amazing background as an engineer herself, doctor in molecular biology, entrepreneur, venture capitalist, member of a variety of organizations, including the board of directors of the Spanish Association of Private Capital, and also a member of the jury of the EIC Accelerator Program. And on my other side, I've got Jimena. And I won't try and butcher your last name. You're the CEO of Alcyon Photonics since 2019. And you joined to drive the commercialization and to scale the company. You've got yourself an engineering degree in telco and an MBA, and you've got a very wide area of experience, professional experience, from BD to marketing strategy in multinational companies like Telefonica, Huawei, Microsoft, and Vodafone. So I guess it's over to you now, less of me speaking and more about yourselves. And if maybe you can introduce yourself in a couple words, especially if I've overlooked any of your respective experiences.
Okay, well, thanks, Julien, for thinking on us to be part of this webinar. It's a real pleasure to be here. Allow me to make a brief introduction of our activity. Okay, BeAble Capital, as you said, is a leading investor in science equity. Our goal is to transform science into real economy in order to tackle the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. We are focused on deep science, no digital technologies. So we invest in nanotechnology, advanced materials, photonics, micro and nanoelectronics, and industrial biotechs. So far, our geographical focus is Spain. Our investment is up to about 3 million euros per company, usually by tranches, and we can invest in real pre-seed, seed, and early stages.
Okay, fantastic. And Jimena?
So that's me, yeah. So maybe one thing that I would like to clarify, and it's why Almudena and I are here together, is because we are one of those science equity funded companies. So Alcyon Photonics is a company that was born in the science, directly in the science from the papers, and that has been able to grow through this stage in order to commit to a mission that is facilitate photonics. So what we do is basically we provide with very strong environment for IP design. So we have high yield, high bandwidth, combinable blocks to facilitate anyone to deliver applications in photonics. I mean, integrated photonics, obviously.
Okay, great. So I guess I'll start with my first question to Almudena, and to ask you, based on your experience, what are the do's and don'ts of raising capital? Like, what should entrepreneurs must have, or on the contrary, must avoid? Do you have any tips on how to raise money for our listeners?
Okay. Raising capital is not easy, okay? In fact, it can be really exhausting. So it's important to have a very positive attitude and to have a lot of determination. Prepare yourself to hear a lot of negative responses, but never give up. In addition to that, it's essential to understand well what is you are talking about and to do it in a language understandable to the person you are addressing. To invest in very early phases, mainly before real sales, can scare many investors. So it's essential to explain to them the importance of investing in these disruptive technologies in these early stages. That said, okay, it's also important to be very clear about how much money you need to ask for and explain very well how you are going to use it. I also recommend studying very well which investor you are going to address, okay, since it's essential to know them properly. And as for things you shouldn't do, okay, the most important thing is not to despair and not to knock on the wrong doors. Neither investors nor you have time to lose, okay? When closing any agreement, look carefully at all the terms and do not accept something that doesn't fit with what you need or with the way you want to do things, okay? Getting money is important, but you don't have to do it at any price, okay?
And I guess actually to bounce on what you just said, when's the right time to look for capital then? Should all founders look for funding?
Deep science companies, okay, have to overcome several phases in which these companies need a lot of money. For example, long technological development and market fits, phase scaling up and a startup of production, etc., in which they still do not have sales to be self-financing. So I think raising capital is a must, okay? The problem is when this task takes up all the time and does not allow the company to continue developing or lasts so long that the company is inactive. This is a serious problem since market opportunity could be lost, okay? That is why it's very important for Europe to develop a private capital industry that is strong, but also is diverse and covers all different market niches. In this sense, I believe that much remains to be done, okay? For example, in the case of investment in science-based industrial companies in their initial stages, which is called science equity, okay? It's a task to do. Having a good science equity industry in Europe ensure the capital raising of science-based industrial companies, and so this boosts the European company, the European economy. So it's essential to do it.
Okay. And one for you, Jimena. So how, you mentioned it very briefly when you introduced yourself, but do you want to go into more details about how Alcyon came together, how you raise your pre-seed and your seed round, also maybe how you got involved in the project, because that's always interesting.
I think it's ours is a good example of how to bring science into market and which vehicles should be available for people interested in starting up. So I think we are one, as I mentioned before, one of the investees from BeAble, and basically we were born from BeAble identify at very early stage technology at the National Research Council. And this is very important because when they identify this technology, they basically look for two things. One is a strong IP, which is our case, and a strong IP in our case doesn't mean not only patents, but also know-how that is transferable to more and more growing library. But on the other hand, it's very important that it's also scalable. So with those two things in mind, and I think that's very important. I was not engaged there at that stage. That's very important. Why? Because the first thing, as Almudena mentioned, in the deep tech companies, that you need to go through a long journey before reaching commercialization. That means that in order to get different rounds, you need to provide with some proofs that this makes sense what you're doing. So our first validation came by the hand of proving that this technology makes sense in terms of industry. I mean, it worked outside the laboratory, and it could be scalable. So that was beyond our seed capital. That was the first milestone that we meet to go beyond, to close our next round. Obviously, in the meantime, we work very hard to get public financing, and I strongly recommend anyone which on its way to the market to look very carefully on all the calls that are available. I think the European Union, in that sense, provides with support to entrepreneurs and startups. And beyond that, next steps is you need to keep on looking for different milestones. And in our case, delivering different milestones in terms of proving market instruments. So to just bear in mind, we are not still in a monetization phase, has given us the opportunity to close a round last autumn and to move forward. So far, just to give you an idea, we have raised around close to 1 million between private and public investment. As I mentioned before, it's very, very important on its way to start meeting different deliverables that make sense for the market and proving that what you're doing is very innovative, what you're doing is very unique, but it's also useful to someone.
And I'll blow my own trumpet, but regarding your comment about grant money and public funds, again, people, there's a community for Photon Hub. There's a lot of information there about other open calls, current open calls, and the details about Photon Hub Europe as well. So feel free to sign up. I guess, one for Almudena, how important would you think debt is for deep tech companies and for photonics companies? Obviously, I guess we hear less about debt than we hear about VC money in general online. And some of our previous speakers, including Smart Photonics and others, have mentioned it. So yeah, would be good to have your opinion.
Okay, the key could be to make a good combination of equity and debt. I think leveraging the equity that is raised with soft loans and grants is a very interesting way to complete investment rounds. Okay, but to do it, this type of companies, the photonic ones, have to be in the center of the European and national policies. Okay, so the work that you do, Julian, at the Photon Hub is essential, making visible the potential of photonics and the importance to be in the center of the public's policies. So I think we have to combine equity and debt.
Okay. And so you mentioned in your introduction that people, like entrepreneurs, should also be assessing the right investors. Yeah. So how do they start doing that? Like, how do they find the best investors? How do they get in contact with them?
Yeah. To be successful when raising capital, it's important to study the investment criteria of the potential investors. Okay, the investment phase, the minimum and a maximum amount of investment, the geographical focus, the investment sector. Okay, and know that they fit perfectly with your investment proposal. Okay, this is of a special interest when we talk about photonics companies in the pre-seed and seed stages, okay? Since the lack of sales and commercial tractions added to the complexity to the technology, okay, force the investor to have knowledge and ways to analyze the investment opportunity that are different from the traditional ones. In addition to the above, okay, the investor is going to be a life partner, and therefore you have to feel comfortable, and there must be trust between both parties, okay? I think it's essential to find the right life partner, okay?
Okay, which is a perfect transition for you, Jimena. What's your role, the role of your investors in the day-to-day, I guess, day-to-day involvement, the advice they give you, the value add in general? Do you have one or more investors? And obviously one of your investors on the call, so yeah.
No, I think this is a very good question. I think the role of investors is very relevant, especially in the earliest stage, because beyond financial, which is obviously common to any startup, you do really need external view on the challenges, and you really need people who, on the one hand, are supportive to provide you with their experience, with their networking, with the backgrounds, but especially to address the tough questions. You know, it's very difficult, and you get easily a no, but you don't get easily a why. You get easily a what you're doing is right, but it's very difficult to find the tough reasons. That's what really are useful for you, because that allows us to pivot, that allows us to improve, that allows us to find your path. And something that happens to, I think, and I discuss with some other entrepreneurs, is that when you're in a startup, you are running like 24/7. You know, it's like your mind is completely kidnapped by the project. Otherwise, this doesn't work. And sometimes you don't have the time to stop and look beyond. Even if you have a strategy, or you are so in love with your project that you keep on knocking and knocking when you should be trying to shortcut or work around some issue. So I think it's very relevant beyond reporting, beyond financial support, to have investors that constructively provide you with tough feedback. And I think that's something that we get a good dose of in our case. But we do really appreciate it, because that has allowed us to move and find the right position in our project to address our next challenge. So I think that's, to me, the key role of the investor, and it's something you should be looking for.
Okay. I'll remind everyone that they can ask questions. I see that there's some already in the chat, but feel free to keep them coming, and we'll address them towards the end of the call. I guess, Almudena, maybe now is a good time to go over the investment theory at BeAble, and how people should also contact you and reach you. How do they initiate contact with you more specifically?
Okay, we trying to ensure a standard process for all the projects that we receive to evaluate, okay? In order to give to them the same treatment. It's important to us to give to all of them the same treatment. On our website, we have enabled an email, so investment opportunities can easily be sent to us. In the same way, if people get in touch with someone in the team, okay, that person channel them through the established standard process of evaluation. And we also talk about other venture capitals in order to find collaboration and check if any of their portfolio companies are raising capital. So we are open to receive all the investment proposal that people want to, or think that we are the right investor to evaluate.
Okay. And the importance of network, is that something that matters deep down when you evaluate projects? I mean, in a world pre-COVID, I guess it was even easier to go and network a lot, but is that something that matters, getting warm referrals?
Okay, I think that when you know people is easier, but usually this type of companies start from scratch. So we try to evaluate them in terms of the market opportunity, the profitability, the scalability, the type of project, not in terms of the networking that we have before that moment, okay? Because I think that we want to okay, for everybody, the beginners, the beginning is not easy. So we try to help them in that early stages, okay, and to try to evaluate the project with the potential of itself, okay.
And now, Jimena, do you want to, I mean, again, you touched on it earlier, but maybe talk about your experience about the ups and downs of launching a business. I guess that goes from the ideation stage to launching the venture to being hired as a CEO to scale the business in general. Like, is there anything you can, concrete things that you want to share with the audience?
So I think it's something I enjoyed that much. I wouldn't recommend anyone, nevertheless. So it's a nowhere situation. I think it's the best professional experience that you can have in your life, because at the end of the day, and startups, as I mentioned before, is a period when you are always understaffed, you're always resource constrained. So that means that you need to be extremely smart and result oriented. So I think in that sense, that's a super high opportunity for training, real life. And on the other one, it's also the opportunity to do something that moves you. I think you cannot start if you don't fall in love with the project. I wouldn't recommend it at all, because this is something that needs to be in your mind all the time. So you live for your startup. That doesn't mean that you don't have a personal life, but I think it's very important that whether you know or not the business, you do see the potential and you believe in that. And I think that's really moving. And to me, coming from the corporate world, something that I think is really attractive for people like me, who has not been a researcher nor has been working in innovation at this stage, is that when you see the impact that science can create in society. And I think that's really, we don't have so often opportunities to make an impact in the world and to build inspiring companies. Usually when we land in established business or large companies, you can have an opportunity to change things that is limited. Whether when you are in a company, you have the opportunity to see not only a new technology, but a new way to do things, and to create a story that makes sense for a lot of people. I think that's super inspiring. So as I mentioned before, a lot of highs. On the downside, never ending work. I think it's also a way to prove yourself on frustration, how much frustration you can get, and you will get it. So not giving up is really, really important, whilst trying to be a bit distant occasionally to understand that not giving up doesn't mean that the no's don't have a why that you need to find out. So I think it's a combination of very important being in love, because you're going to get a lot of rewarding moments, but also being prepared for frustration and for hard work. But in a nutshell, to me, it pays off.
And I guess it's great having founders and entrepreneurs and CEOs like yourself who've got very different backgrounds. I would refer people back to the previous webinars we've done, where we've had usually researchers turned entrepreneurs. So it's good to see there's more than one model out there. So I'm lost now in my questions, but yes, Almudena, I guess if we take a step back, what drives you to make an investment? How does the selection process work? What are the key elements that you're looking for? In other words, how did you came across Alcyon in the first place and led you to put some money in their rounds?
Okay. BeAble Capital investment focus is science equity, and therefore we seek to invest in science-based industrial companies from pre-seed and seed stages. But not only that, we are looking to solve challenges not covered by the market and tackle the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And all the above from a perspective of profitability. Okay, that is achieving the tandem impact with profitability. This is very important, okay? And Alcyon's proposal is to make photonics simple and accessible, allowing its great potential, all the potential of the photonics to be used by the industry, and thus unlocking the use of photonics. So it's a commitment with a vision and with a great technological strength, a great market opportunity, and with a super team leading the initiative. So we can't ask for more. So we love this company, okay?
Is there, like, obviously you've got a portfolio, a larger portfolio. So is there any specific other company that you want to raise maybe eyes on today?
I think that, okay, all the investees that we have in our portfolio, we consider that they are, okay, we consider that they are very good companies with a great proposal for the society. So, for example, I don't know, we have other company in the cosmetics sector, AGP, and we have other ones in the in the microplastic sector, okay, to recovery microplastics. So, okay, I think that as an investor, you have to create a portfolio in which you believe, okay? It's very important for that, because you have building companies from scratch in our case. So you have to have a clear view about the potential of all your portfolio, okay? It's important, I think.
Okay. And I guess just a few more before we open up to the questions. I see that Hans is very active, so I'm letting all the others jump in as well with their questions. What do you remember, Jimena, about your first meeting, I guess, with Almudena, and what was the due diligence process, and like how did the conversations go essentially?
So I think ours is a funny story, because Almudena and we met like more than 10 years ago, and and I was really impressed. I remember first time she introduced herself about her educational background. But what really resonated me is that she did a business introduction when she said she was creating a VC because she wanted to change the world, and that was really like, oh my God, you know. And to that time, we've been in contact, and I've been in different multinational companies, different roles. But that was always like a pending conversation between both of us, because impact and problem solving are a strong driver to me in terms of motivation. So I must say that it was like when she talked to me about this company, even though it was a very, very, very early stage, she basically told me we have a technology. She sent me some scientific papers. I must say I knew almost nothing about photonics, but the fact that Almudena was trusting in this project with this vision of creating a business of impacts to make a better world really made me make a move forward and join Alcyon. So it's been quite a different story. It's not me creating the company, it's been me being hired for the next phase to understand it's a good technology, but what it's it for. And I think that's what science equity do, is they identify strong technology and then they find the right people around to make the technology reach the market to solve the right questions. So finding the question has been my job there. And as I mentioned before, problem solving is something super exciting to me. I'm engineering in background. Okay. And on the one hand, this idea of making things of impact is really exciting. So couldn't say no.
Fantastic. Yeah, I guess last question directly to you, Almudena. As an investor, what advice would you want to give startups in general? Like, so what's the one thing that you would want them to go away with?
Okay. Well, as I mentioned before, photonics is complex. Okay. Mainly in pre-sales stages, pre-seed and seed stages. So look for investors that can understand your project and technology, and it's very important that their investment criteria match with your proposal, okay? And apart from this, okay, you must present a project that can be scalable, profitable, and provides a solution to an important unmet market needs, okay? Being sustainable and beneficial to society. This last part is essential right now because sustainability is one of the most important trends in the market, okay? Finding the right investor is not easy, but it's not impossible. It's a matter of time, okay, and a question to study and to go to the right person, okay.
And for you, Jimena, what's your future plans, I guess, investment-wise and others, if you're happy to disclose anything specific?
Sure. I mean, we are now engaged in closing a new round. We are attempting to close around 1 million. Some investment already almost agreed. We'll say never is done until the money is in the bank. Still missing some tickets, and the idea is this money should allow us for the next 2 years to close the gap to commercialization and to really create this environment where photonics is going to be very, very easy for anyone, but very also powerful because it's going to be behind or strong high yield, high bandwidth IP for anyone who wants to join the photonics world or improve the photonics capabilities of the application in integrated photonics.
Okay. I guess I'll take, now's the time to ask for people to drop more questions. We've already got 2. One, I guess, touches a bit what I was asking earlier about the referrals when you speak to investors. So I guess it's not targeted at either one of you. So whoever wants to speak first. It seems like some people say they've got the impression that when it's not a warm intro, the project is not looked with the same eyes maybe as if it was if it's submitted directly on a website. Do you agree? I mean, I guess you can only talk about BeAble and how you deal with things, and not for the whole array of investors out there.
Okay, I think that maybe okay, when you know someone's, okay, it's easier, okay, it's clear. But as I told you, in our case, we try to focus attention in the project, okay, and to do the effort to know the team and the background, okay, about that and all the specific things of the project. So I think that in our case, this is not a problem, but maybe as it can be a usual thing in the market, sure, because everybody is looking for to trusted people, okay, in order to have a clear view about what is behind that opportunity. Okay.
Okay.
If I can add something very shortly, I think it's if you already have identified the website, then you have a way. I mean, do not stop at the website. There's LinkedIn. There are many ways to reach back. So I think the difficulty is when you think to try to find the investor that has a match with you. You think that the investor, based on your website, has a match. Then the problem is not that you send something to the web, is that you need to find a workaround, and you will, and then it's not a problem.
Okay. I guess the other question we have, Hans again. So thank you. Keep the questions coming. How much easier is it when your investor is from the same country as you are in terms of legal, language, and just general contact points? I mean, you're both Spanish. Does that help at all in the conversation? The geography, the language.
Okay, I think that it depends of the investment criteria of the fund, okay, of the VC, okay. If they are a local investor, okay, you have to look for you are only investing in the same country, okay. Something that usually happens in pre-seed and seed stages is that it's a very local investment, okay, because it's a small company. So usually only in the same country you can find investors for the project. But you can find also VCs that have a pan-European investment criteria. In that case, okay, it's not a problem, okay. I think that everybody is using English as the business language. So, okay, I think that the most important thing, as I told you before, is to understand what is the investment criteria of the VC. Okay, if you have a clear view about that, I think it's not a problem.
Okay. I don't see any more questions, so I'll just ask my own. And I guess IP. So you mentioned it briefly as well. How important is it in general to when you assess a project? Is it a must-have? Is it something that you actually delve into a lot more details? Or
okay, the protection of know-how and technology of companies is a key factor. Okay, within the entrepreneur and investment ecosystem, mainly in science-based companies. Okay. Companies that own intellectual property assets become more attractive and interesting to attract funds, okay, from potential investors or strategic partners, okay? But the thing is not to have patents per se, okay? It's to have a good industrial property strategy. I mean, patents, industrial secret, and combination of them, okay? A good IP strategy adds value to the company. Industrial property does not have to be understood as an end, okay? It's only a tool to achieve the company's objectives, okay? But in my case, specific case, it's a very important point to evaluate.
okay, interesting. One for you, Jimena. I guess what's if you had to share one of the tips that you got along the way, which you thought was the most meaningful, like what's the best thing you've ever been told and that you've taken on board and would be happy to pass on?
So maybe the best, let me think, so many things have been on the way. So I think the best thing I could advise anyone is to get as much feedback as early as possible. And that means, for instance, you can imagine from potential customer, but you can imagine from providers. But even if you are not opening around from investor, you can have conversation on how you see my product, how you see it in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time. So I think get as much feedback as possible as early as. So because that will ensure your proposal, will allow you to make changes on time.
Okay. Another question that we have is the investment criteria of investors, I guess, very strict, or is there some wiggle room? Like, are they flexible with that investment criteria? I guess that's one aimed at you, Almo.
Yes, I think that the investment criteria is the base, okay? You have to fit that criteria. After that, some flexibility you have, okay? But it's important to if you don't fit the investment criteria that a VC has in the web page, okay? I think that you don't have many possibilities to get an investment, okay? So I think that you have to follow the things that they say in the web page, for example.
And I guess the last one before we wrap up, because we're reaching closer to the time, what kind of KPIs in general are you looking for? So you already mentioned quite a few items that you're on the lookout, but are there any specific kind of KPIs or must-have documents or anything that you would not go forward without?
This is a very important question, Julian, because I think that it's very important to manage the expectation, okay, the expectation of the investors, okay. So the type of development of the industrial science-based companies, the photonic ones, is different than others, for example, digital companies or pharma companies, okay? So it's very important and it's essential to establish specific KPIs for this type of companies, but this is not easy, okay? This is not easy. For example, in pharma companies, this is you know that this is a long way to develop the company, but it's very clear the phases and the KPIs, the milestone that you have to overcome. But in the industrial science-based companies, this is difficult. So for that reason, I think that it's very important to have a professional investor, a science equity funds, with you in terms that give to you the KPIs and the milestone that you have to get in order to go to the next stage and to get the market as soon as possible. So I think that it's important to define the good KPIs in each case, okay, and to do it with a professional investor that helps you to go to the next stage, okay.
Okay. We've got an ultimate question actually from Aaron, and again, I guess this can be aimed at the two of you. How do you perceive companies where shares are owned by external people to the company itself, so people who don't work in the company, like partners at research institutes, and yeah, I would imagine non-directly involved people in the business?
Okay, I think that, well, in my case, this is not a problem, okay? You have to understand the cap table, okay? And if you understand the cap table and how the different members of the cap table are supporting the company in a direct way or indirect way, and also to understand the story, the history of the company, I think is not a problem, okay? It's different to have bad cap tables in terms that most of the a great part of the company you don't understand the members of the cap table. That's the problem. But if you understand that, I think it's not in my case, it's not a problem.
So the narrative and the explication about what, so cap table, by the way, for those who are not necessarily aware, is capitalization table, and it's usually the breakdown of everyone who owns a piece of your business.
Yeah.
Okay, so importance of narrative. I guess that can also be a good way of concluding this chat and mentioning that narrative is always important when you pitch to investors anyway. So I want to thank you both very much for participating today. Thank you, Jimena. Thank you, Almudena. I'll be sharing my screen now again with the details for people to be able to log in into the community of Photon Hub. So please join. We'll be sharing very shortly more information about the upcoming webinar. It's going to be closer to mid-April, sorry, because we're doing it every 2 months now. And so I guess it's a wrap. Thank you again. I'll be staying here a couple more minutes with the slides on. We'll be sharing the video of the webinar to people who are part of the community via newsletter as well. So thank you again, and talk to you very shortly, hopefully.